right, we are live. Hey everybody, Chris Whipper from On the Bus Sales Training Coaching Consulting, and this is out of chapter 16 of the book. And we are going to discuss today hiring and managing salespeople. And this can work for more than just salespeople, but as this is our sales training class, we're going to have that as a focus. And with all our classes, they're interactive. So let's just start with the general question of what is everybody's hiring system now? What does everybody do now when they're looking for a new employee? How do you start? How do you do the interview? Let's hear what people do. And then I'll maybe give some suggestions if I have some. So Lois, you want to start?
Sure. So my process is a 4-part interview. Part 1 is going to talking to the person briefly on the phone. Usually it's about 15 or 20 minutes. I ask a handful of basic questions just to kind of see if they're the right fit for us and where could potentially be the right fit for them, because it has to be collaborative. We have to be able to work together right from the start. And then the second part of the process is doing a longer face-to-face interview. And then part 3 is a demo. Because we're in the doing industry, I want to see how well they work with the client. So I give them a profile of a client and have them not only create a program for that particular client for their first session, but we also do, I also have them write it out. So then
So kind of role-playing kind of thing?
It is a role play. So I play the part of the profile of the client. And then I basically throw everything at them during that session. Anything that could possibly go wrong in a session, I give them every possible scenario. How would you handle this? What if they said that? What if this happened? What if that happened? What if it was too easy? What if it was too hard? So we go through that. Usually if they get to that point, and you know, not to say that most likely hired, but I whittled down substantially at that point.
Okay.
And then the last part of it is the basics of onboarding. So I go through all of their education, making sure that that is valid. I also make sure that that all of their references check out, and I call even their most recent employer in the industry, as close to the industry as possible. I like to talk with clients if I can, and then we onboard them if that all checks out. So it's pretty extensive.
Okay. I'm assuming there's background checks and other things like that you have going on as well.
Or is inclusive of a background check as well.
Okay. And how does it start? It starts with a job description that you're posting somewhere, and then you're getting in resumes and kind of taking it from there. All right. So you've got a 4-step process. It's great that you have a system. And how many times a month do you plan on doing this, and how many do you actually do it?
It's usually as needed type of thing. I'm currently in an interview process, or I was in an interview process for someone, a client that moved to a new area, but I wound up putting it on hold because the client decided that he only wants to train in a facility, and I don't have a facility down there at the moment, and nothing is opened. So there's really nowhere for the client to train at this moment. So I put it on hold. But I do have a couple people that are, you know, kind of waiting in the wings.
All right, but so let me ask, so again, what would be your behavioral goal or your KPI in a month of doing this? How many would you like to do in a month? What's your goal?
I don't really have one. It's as a case by case. So, you know, as I need someone. So right now I'm getting to the point where I'm probably going to need to hire someone in the Randolph area. So I'm probably in the next few weeks going to put a job posting up because I got notice from one of my trainers who is going to be going to school full time in the fall. So She does, and she only has a couple clients that are only training virtual, so it's not like a need to right now, but it's good to kind of have it in the back, on the back burner.
Okay. Anyone else have a hiring practice that they want to discuss or share, or goals for themselves? I see people shaking their heads. No?
No.
Okay. So you guys that have known me for a while know that my feeling is that owners, one of their major KPIs and behavioral goals is they always need to be interviewing. So it doesn't mean hiring, but you never know when somebody's going to leave, when you need someone to leave, whatever it might be. But by interviewing and having a stable full of, thoroughbreds, everyone performs better. So, in a, let's say a restaurant situation, if you have somebody, or a retail situation, if you have somebody who calls out a lot, you can then say something to the effect of, no problem, somebody else would love those hours. So if you can't make it, we'll give them a shot. And, they may not get those hours back, right? I think Babe Ruth got his position playing baseball when somebody kind of called out sick or was hurt, and then they never got their job back. So there's a little bit of that fear going on, but it's important to have a stable full of good people, ready to go, and it'll just make everyone better. It's not a threat. It's not fear. It's just reality. You've got a business to run, so always be interviewing. That's part of what it takes to run a business. Be careful when hiring salespeople, first of all, because they're salespeople. And their very best sales job might be selling you, in this situation. So they're very good at first impressions. They're very good at interviews. They kind of thrive on them. It's interesting when I work with people that are interviewing, if they're a high I in particular, I'll say, so how'd it go? And they'll say, oh, great. We talked for an hour and a half. And, I talked for like 60 minutes of it. And I'm thinking, and that tells you it went great? I don't know. And I'll say, so what questions did you ask? Like, oh no, I just answered their questions. That doesn't sound like a good interview to me. It wouldn't make me want to hire them, because it shows that they really just want to talk a lot and maybe not learn a lot, kind of thing. But so do remember, when you are interviewing salespeople in particular, that they're very good at first meetings, and don't take the bait, kind of thing. And here's a scenario that can work for many of you, and it's my favorite, and that is, I love group interviews. So Lois, if you're hiring trainers, what if we had a quarterly group interview, where once a quarter, the last Wednesday of the month from 2 to 4, you interviewed 10 trainers, and you can make it a combined, what?
I never have that many. Usually.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
Hold that thought.
Yeah.
So it could be a combined interview orientation. So it's similar to what I used to do with a mock board meeting. So we can invite 5 people, 10 people, whatever you want, to a group interview. Your job is to fill the group interview. So it's on a consistent date, the last Wednesday of the month, the last Wednesday of the quarter, whatever it might be, right? But your main focus is to fill that. So when you're at a networking event, you can say, look, we're always interviewing. We're looking to grow. If you know someone who might be interested, we have interviews the last Wednesday of the month. Please refer them to me. And that way, instead of giving everybody, let's say, we'll use the number 10 people an hour interview, you're now interviewing 10 people in an hour, right? So that just saved you 9 hours. And then you pick your favorite 2 or 3 and you sit with them for an hour. Does that make sense? That we can weed out, hold on one sec, that we can weed out who's not making it to the top, kind of thing, and go through it. We can see how they interact with others. Maybe in a training situation, they each get a turn to train and present, and we can see how they do. If it's a team situation, let's say it's a IT company, We can give them a computer and team them up and say, how would you guys go about diagnosing this problem? Or whatever it might be, and we can see how they work together. But there's something about a group interview that, for me, when it's a team environment, I love. It's just a thought, just out of the box thinking, and it's a time saver. Renee, you had a question, go ahead.
I was going to say, how do you evaluate people when there's 10 people sitting in the room? I mean, for me, if I'm hiring bookkeepers, I'm not necessarily looking for the person that's going to stand, is going to be, you know what I mean? Like,
it's an excellent question, and here's the answer. So, and this is part of what we're going to work on, is I would have a list of questions ready to go, and we're all going to work on having 10 questions that we want to ask during an interview, so you can start writing them down now if you want. But I would have somebody else in the room with you asking the questions. So you can kind of look and see how they interact and how they respond. So you're not looking at your clipboard at the next question. You're watching the person. You're getting to know the person. You're seeing if they're making eye contact. You're seeing how they'll do in those situations. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just trying to visualize it with bookkeeping.
Well, I think with a bookkeeper, you could say, so what would you do if you came across this situation? If they have a shoebox full of crumpled receipts, how do you handle that versus somebody who's very pristine and, but you see a mistake and they're very proud of the work they've given you. How would you handle letting them know that there's a mistake here or something along those lines? I'm just thinking off the top of my head. But I assume communication is important for that role. No good? It's okay.
Visual person.
Well, visualize 4 people who want a job as a bookkeeper in a room with you and your top bookkeeper, and have your top bookkeeper ask the questions, and you're there to evaluate the answers and give feedback and figure out who you want to make it to the next level. So know that 2 of the 4 are going to get a next interview and figure out who that might be.
Okay.
Okay. But I think having a list of questions ready that are systematized for the interviewing process is a great one. And I think there needs to be a way of having a numeric score. So if they get 7 out of 10 questions right, they make it to a next level, or you decide how to weight them. But there should be a numeric way of evaluating, so it's not based on if you're having a good day or a bad day. There's just a numeric score based on their answers, which determines if they make it to the next round, kind of thing. Does that make sense? Okay.
Chris, would you, if I was going to be giving an interview in this similar situation, let's say it was like a 1 to 5 scoring or a 1 to 3 scoring, would essentially I write at the top like 1 dud, 2 like answered, or 3 like blew me away type of thing, and then like that way the key to the numbers is kind of in front of me as I'm observing, and like that way I'm just kind of.
So I think it's fine. It's perfect to have that. I wouldn't write it down. I don't want them to know that 1 is a dud. They may think 1 is
Okay.
number 1,
Okay.
but they don't need to know that, you think they're a dud.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
And they may get nervous if they see that for the next question, or something like that. Listen, we want to help people along, right? The idea is to help people succeed and have them succeed for you. We don't want to set them up to fail, if that makes sense.
Great.
Okay. So I'd like you all to think of 10 questions with a weighted average and score for answering the questions, where anybody scores 20 or higher moves on to the next level, kind of thing, for a 1-to-1 interview. Does that make sense? Okay, so do you want to start working on 10 questions, please? I'll tell you now one question that I want you to ask, and somewhere in the middle is, can you tell me about the last time you helped someone without being asked? And we'll talk about that in a second. And I'll tell you why. Okay? So why don't I pause the recording while you guys write your questions out.
Oh, I
So,
don't.
here's a question that's worth asking. If you don't have a system and you have hired people, has it worked? Have they been good employees?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think it might work better if you have a system and you know more of these things up front, or are you just trusting your gut?
Tend to trust my gut.
Okay. And that's worked well for your size company. But it's also hard to delegate that responsibility if there's not a system in place, you know? All right, let's jump in and see where we are with this. So Lois, let's hear your questions, because I know you've done this in the past.
Okay, I also put them, if anybody wants to steal any of them, because I'll fly through them. These are the ones I normally ask. So I also put them in the group chat, and I also put in my text to Brian. So at some point, if you could look at that and give me feedback, I'd appreciate it. Okay, so my questions are, first, in my pre-screening, I can collect basic data, you know, checking their name, how they pronounce their name, if they have a nickname, address, phone number, email. Then I ask, where will you travel? I tell them a little bit about the company first to kind of give them a little heads up of what we do, and if that's something that they want to do. Because truthfully, if they're not willing to be in the car and use their own vehicle, then I just end it right there. Not to waste their time or mine. Where will you travel? What's your availability? How long have you been in the industry? What do you like most about the position that you're currently holding? What do you like least? What do you think of a phrase that's common to the industry, no pain, no gain? It just gives me a lot of information about them as a person and how they think about training. What experience do you have working with adults who are in our demographic, post-rehab, post-baby? Are you familiar with what is safe numbers for healthy blood pressure? This is giving me baseline of information of if they know the basics of what I need them to know. I asked them about scope, so if they would stay in scope, because for me that's really important. I also asked if they've been let go from a job before, and I said there's no wrong answers here. I just would like to know how you handled that situation. How many days were you late in the last year? And if they say they're usually on time, I bracket them. And then I'm adding, tell me about a time when you helped someone without being asked. Then during the formal interview, if it was in person, I'd say, how was your drive today? Tell me a little bit about yourself. What are your long-term employment goals? Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? What type of trainer are you? What type of learner are you? Are your certifications up to date? What happens if a client says this hurts or that hurts during session? What happens if a client goes into labor? How do you learn best? How would you describe your learning style? And then I ask, you obviously have accomplished a great deal in your life. What do you attribute to that success? Do you think telling white lies is ever justified for the greater good? How do you handle a client that cancels within the 24 hours of a session? Many of our trainers have other jobs. Do you have another job? Where? What do you like most? What do you like least? How do you handle it if a client asks you to train on the side? Why did you choose the school or certification house that you got your education from? How do you motivate unmotivated people? What are some of your interests outside of work? How do you come up with your training programs? How do you typically prepare for sessions? How do you demonstrate good listening techniques? What are proper mechanics of certain exercises? So that's the formal interview. And then I have questions for references too. If you want to hear those, I can run through those really fast.
So I can see why you don't interview a lot, because this is taking a lot of time with what you do. Right. And so when we ask for 10 questions, you've given us, I think, 40 questions between the two different interviews. Do you typically ask them all, or are you picking and choosing from the list?
Most of them, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to suggest.
I can't just take anybody, so.
I understand, but if you tighten your questions up, you might be more apt for interviewing more as needed. But just
The
a thought.
problem is that all of them give me the insight of, because I'm not going to be face to face with the trainers much, I need to know that going into it, they have a baseline of information, of knowledge that if they don't have, I can't take them on, because I don't have time or the want to train people how to train.
Right. Got it. Okay. Renee, let's hear your questions. Do you have, and you don't have to have 40, you don't have to have 10. Let's just hear what you have.
Let's see. How many years of bookkeeping experience do you have? Are you proficient in Microsoft Office Suite? Are you proficient in QuickBooks Online or desktop? Are you skilled in operational and administrative management, business development, and team management? If I asked your former employer to describe you, what would they say? Have you previously maintained a general ledger, including general ledger adjustments? Why would you like to work for us? What do you think is the best attribute you bring to the table as an employee? What would you say one of your weaknesses as an employee is? And then, let's see, some other ones. How many years of experience in accounting work do you have? This is kind of like with number one. Explain your experience in this field. Take your time. And then I go on to get more specific, like what type of criteria do you find important when you have finished a bank reconciliation? And if you were doing a bank rec and you found an outstanding deposit, what would you do? You know, so I ask them like questions about that, like little, so I can get an idea of their skills.
Okay, very good. Melissa, let's hear what you got.
I think you're gonna hear some replication or duplication.
Completely
so I love
fine.
how, yep. So I love how Lois, you know, goes into like the logistics of the person and their name, what they like to be called, and then giving them background of the company. And then really, you know, what is your current job? You know, some in the restaurant industry, some people are not working at the time, but sometimes they are proactively. So what is your current job and what do you like about it? How did you hear about us? Why would you like to work here? Have you worked in fast-paced environments before? What do you think of when talks to you about customer experiences? The situation around. Can you tell me the last time you helped someone without being asked? If a friend could describe you, what would they say? What motivates you? And I don't know if I would prompt them with the recognition, reward, or responsibility, but that's how I would try to bucket it. Chris and I had talked a little bit about that yesterday. And then what questions do you have for me, for us?
Okay, very good. Sarah, let's hear yours.
I don't have many, but I thought, tell me something about yourself that I can't find out from reading your resume. Why do you want to work here and how did you find out about us? Tell me about your last job and why you left. And then tell me the last time you helped someone without being asked.
Okay, very good. So I'm glad that other than Lois, nobody said, do you drive? Because you can't ask that during an interview.
I don't.
You can put these things in your job description as a reason for applying, or what a way around that is you could say, let's say Melissa could say something like, listen, if our burglar alarm goes off in the middle of the night, do you have a way of getting here? So that's a way of finding out if they're relying on public transportation or not. But we can't discriminate by questions like that when you interview, unless it's part of the job like it is with Lois. So I'm glad that you, none of you included that. One question I always like.
Have reliable means of transportation.
Okay. One question that I always like to ask is, can you tell me about the last time you helped someone without being asked? And this is why I like to ask that question. And this is why you have somebody else ask the questions while you're evaluating the answers. because they're going to either look up to the right, they're going to look down to the left, they're going to give their tell, and they're about to, let's call it, make up a story. They're about to get creative. And now you're going to know whenever they're going to get creative, that they're going to look up to the right or look down to the left when they say, wasn't me, you know, kind of thing. You know, it depends, but we have their tell. And it's always interesting to hear anyway, and it kind of breaks up the interview. It kind of takes the tension out of the room a little bit because it's not as formal a question. But I always like to ask that question. And I remember once I was asked and I was able to say, you know, I noticed somebody didn't bring in their garbage can this morning, so I brought it up to their garage for them. And that was a perfectly legit answer, and it was just something that I knew, you know, whatever, but I didn't have to look up or look down. I didn't have to think of anything. But it's just interesting. You get a feel for who people are. All right, so we have their questions and we've studied their responses, and now they've moved on to the next level and we've hired someone.
Can we take a step back? The difference between looking up to the right and looking down to the left, like how do you practice, I guess like when I'm in the heat of it and I'm looking at someone.
So you have a lot of C in you, you're gonna look straight up. So that's what you do. Your go-to is to go look up because you're thinking of your words, and that's what C's do. And
See,
I'm not
think that I look to the left. I always think I look up
you
to
don't.
the left.
You don't.
Okay.
You look straight up. And in fact, if you rewind this video, you would see that. But I'm not an NLP guy. There's a whole science here, and cops study this stuff, that they can tell so much about you just from this area of your face, you know? I'm just saying that people have tells, that when they get nervous, they do certain things. And the interviewing process can be a nervous process for a lot of people, and that's okay too. I'm not saying don't hire them. I'm just saying learn from it, right? All right, so now let's fast forward. We've hired someone. So now I'm thinking in terms of salespeople, but you can think of in terms of any employees. How many here have staff meetings of some type? Just raise your hand. Okay, so 1, 2, so 2 of you have staff meetings. I always would recommend a staff meeting. You need to pay them to come, even if it's Zoom, I don't know what the rules are, but you want them to come. We want input, we want to know our people, they need to know you. We should have a staff meeting once every 6 weeks, whatever it is. Lois, do you have staff meetings? Did your hand go up? Good. You have a big team. What do you have, 16 trainers, something like that?
14.
And there's 14, and there's always stuff going on, and there's changes, and not just with COVID and other things, but you know, you may have found an interesting article or whatever it might be, but we should have staff meetings. And I don't always suggest that you have to be the ones running them. You should spotlight certain employees at different times. So maybe each month or each time a different employee gets to bring a topic to discuss, kind of thing. So it's not just your show, and it makes it more interactive and fun for everyone. Not the purpose of this talk though. So what I like to do at staff meetings, and it's funny, I used to work with some Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 500 companies, and it's amazing what you can learn from these bigger companies. And so behavioral goals, right? So we've talked about KPIs, we've talked about behavioral goals. If we hand out, Lois, you with me? Hold on. Lois, this is important for you. You here? You with me? Okay. I'm guessing there's a child in the room. So if we can hand out an index card with behavioral goals on it at each meeting, breaking down their goals for weekly, that would be beneficial. So let me explain that a little differently. So let's say, Renee, you want your bookkeepers once a week, with all their interaction with all their different people, to ask for a referral. And you teach them how to do it, to just say, who do you know that could benefit from our services? You know, and you tell them, if you ever get a compliment, that's your key. So if anybody says, you do great work, I love you guys, that's when you get to say, So who do you know who might be able to benefit from our services? And then they have it on an index card. So you're giving out your behavioral goals on an index card. Now, what I always did was put it in people's shirt pocket, but what you can do is this can be done virtually, but they get a little check mark and they say who they asked for the referral, and the date and the time. So you know they're not making it up, kind of thing. So, you know, Sarah, in your world, you can do it for yourselves also. You can have a staff meeting with yourself. And, you know, sometimes being a solopreneur is tricky. And we got to trick ourselves that, you know, it's work time versus play time or whatever it might be. But we can give ourselves index cards with reminders for these things. So think about the things you would like on your index cards. And then you can have some kind of competition. So Renee, if you, I'm not picking on you, but if you have 3 or 4 bookkeepers and maybe if they ask each for 4 referrals in a month, you know, they all qualify to win the prize, and then whoever goes above and beyond gets, you know, a gift certificate for dinner. Something like that. That might not work in your situation, Melissa. It could be a free tank of gas or an oil change, or who knows what it could be. You pick the prize. But I like competition, friendly competition, supportive competition, not backstabbing, not trying to hurt each other, you know, but just fun amongst each other. And I think that is something that you can do to motivate employees. And Lois, you would love it if your trainers were asking for referrals, I'm sure. And if we could give them an index card and say, look, I need you to ask for 8 referrals a month. I don't care how you do it. I don't care if it's your dry cleaner, but people need to know who we are and what we do. And I need you to ask for a referral. And if you do it 8 times, I'm going to give you a tank of gas. But you show me who and when, you know, that kind of thing. Just a thought. But you could see how that can work. And you know, you may be thinking, oh, Chris, this is so basic. Yeah, it's basic, but it works. And any of the owners I've worked with that have done this, it always works. And they always make a card for themselves as well. Make sense? Okay. It's important to know with employees what their motivators are. And what I have found, and I don't know where I read this or where I heard it, and I give credit to whoever it is because it works and it's accurate, but there's a 3R rule. It just works. The motivator for many employees is either responsibility, recognition, or reward. And if you think of the people around you, we all have these things that motivate us. So you love the employees that want more responsibility, assuming they're good at it. And that's someone you can delegate to. The recognition ones are great because, you know, they want a title, they want a business card, they want a plaque with their name on it outside their door. It doesn't cost you much to keep them happy. The reward ones typically are the salespeople. Yeah, they like to be recognized. They want to ring the bell and want everybody to know they got the big sale, but what they really want is the big commission. But if they're bringing in the dollars, I guess that's part of it, and that's okay. But just think about what their motivator is, and that's part of what you're looking for when you're hiring them. Which one of the 3 R's, responsibility, recognition, or reward, are they? And again, the first 2 don't cost you much. It can cost you a lot if it's not done right. You know, if you have somebody who wants responsibility but just isn't good at it, that could cost you a ton. If you want someone who's so hungry for recognition, they find themselves in the paper representing you badly, that can hurt you too. So let's just keep an eye on that. But these are important. And that's pretty much it from my notes. But I got to tell you, of everything, those cards, those index cards, work great. They really do. It's a tangible thing. You can email them and just say, here's your goals for the month of August. Does that make sense? All right. Any questions? Any comments? Remember, this is interactive.
So what if they don't do it?
That's why you're interviewing, isn't it?
Right, but when I lose trainers or when I let go of trainers, notoriously, the clients either, many of them will fall off or they get nasty. And no matter how hard I try to maintain relationships, the trainer ultimately builds a even better relationship with the client because they see them all the time. And I feel like it's natural to do that.
So I'm wondering if it's to your advantage that every third or fourth time your clients get a different trainer. And it's just a thought. It's just a thought.
Not. I mean, think about it from your perspective. You've worked with us.
Yeah.
To say to you, okay, every fourth time we're going to change the train. It'd be a nightmare for me.
I got to tell you, I would welcome that. If you're asking my opinion, I would say absolutely, no problem.
Every 3 sessions, I change the trainer.
You could send me somebody different each time. I'd be okay with that. Hold on, Melissa.
But where would the consistency be? There's a learning curve for the trainer.
Because they're your trainers, and they would compare notes with each other, and they would share that information.
No
the
way.
consistency is it's.
I would have no way. Absolutely not.
Okay, I'm the client. I'm letting you know from a client's position. You've asked the question. The consistency is your brand. It's your trainers. I may have a favorite without a doubt, and I could let you know that I'd want to stick with that person. But how would I know until I've tried them?
I don't have that kind of bandwidth with my trainers to be able to send you different people. And from a availability perspective,
Well, I don't know. If it's Zoom, I suspect you have all the bandwidth and availability that you want. But that's just a guess. So again, it's just an opinion, and I am a client, and I'm answering your question from a client's point of view. I'd love to experience them all.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, and
Okay,
then Melissa goes, go ahead.
Kind of going through Lois's stuff. I get you want to be consistent, and I see how that could become a nightmare for you. But if you ask the client, let me know if you want us to mix things up occasionally and offer you a different trainer, and maybe put it in their court, and you actually might find then that the ability for you to switch in a new trainer, they might find that to be an asset without forcing it on the client. Put it in their court. You know what I mean? It just might, if you have a client who's maybe somewhat happy, maybe not, they might be on the fence, or they might, they might think of you as being more of an asset if they have that ability to change up their trainer. But I would put that on the client's side, not you having to reschedule and change. And they can reach out if they feel like they want to mix it up for a quarter, maybe have a different trainer, and they might like a different perspective. But if you do like a whole month, I wouldn't say every other trainer, because how are they supposed to stay consistent? But if they could go for like maybe a month with a new trainer to mix it up, they might find that kind of interesting. I don't know. Just a thought.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Would it be advantageous that after so many sessions, let's say 8 sessions, you offered the client like a $5 off if they answer 3 questions about like a feedback session about their trainer? And essentially what it does is it forces like a 5 to 10 minute phone call with you and the client. So you're building a relationship with the client, you're gaining feedback about your employee, but it's really not about that. It's about you holding on to that relationship with the person that's being trained.
Yeah, I've done usually after if a client sticks on usually more than a couple of months, and I reach out to call, I get voicemail, or many of them will reply via text. And
what do you do when you get a voicemail?
What?
I have a message.
what if when they're signing up, you let them know that that's part of what's going to happen? Like in,
Oh, yeah, I do.
Okay.
The thing is that once people are comfortable with their trainer and most people like the consistency of having the same person or having two people. Most of my newer clients are training with more than one person already. And they like to have that a little bit of difference, but my older clients that have been with me for a while, like for them to change trainers, they don't want to. They're happy. They like the consistency. They like the,
All right. Were any other thoughts? All right, so let's do takeaways and wrap this up. So, Renee, what was your takeaway today? I'm going to come back to you.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Melissa, what was your takeaway today?
A stable full of thoroughbreds. Everyone performs better.
Okay. Sarah?
That hiring's just as scary as I think it is.
Okay. Lois?
I think I have a good system for hiring. I did get a few new questions today that I think are valuable. That's my takeaway. And I would like to get a takeaway up for a text to send this guy.
I thought we covered that pretty well in the beginning.
I still don't have an actual text to send. I'm like, my head.
Text it to us. Put it in the chat. Like
I did.
Well, no, then we'll have to stay on here. Why don't you guys message each other privately? Renee, go ahead. What was your takeaway?
Okay, so my takeaway is what are your employees' motivators? Is it responsibility, recognition, or reward? And to identify that so that you.
That's a great one for you. Good for you. All right, so we'll wrap this up here. Again, when the book comes out, this will be chapter 16 or 18. I haven't decided right now. It's 16. I hope to see you all at Bang on Thursday at 4 o'clock. And anybody here not coming? Lois is not coming. Sarah, are you coming? We missed you the other day because morning's not good for you, right?
I didn't have EA and J, so I totally spaced.
I had the feeling. We missed you. It was noticed. Renee, we're going to see you on Thursday at 4?
I believe so.
Very good. Bring a client or two. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you.
Thank you.